All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to JavaScript Jam, the podcast. We have a really interesting episode for you today about Million.js. We got the creator and the main advocate of the framework here with us. We got Aiden and Toby. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'd love to know a little bit about you and about your framework.
Hey, I'm Aiden Bai. I'm the creator of Million.js. I'm an incoming CS freshman to University of Washington. I've been
Wow.
working on Million for for 2 years now. It's been really fun, actually.
So were you in high school when you
Yeah,
created
it
it?
was just in high school. I
Dope.
started sophomore year of high school, I believe. Um, so yeah, it's been a really fun time, and it's really cool seeing people using it. That's all I have to say, Toby.
Hello everyone. I'm Toby. I'm Tobiloba, and I'm a front-end engineer, software engineer. Uh, I'm in my school stuff. Like I just finished the exam, so I think I'm in my third year now. So I'm going to my third year now of like CS in University of Lagos, and at the moment I just love doing open source work, accessibility stuff, and creating content online for tech stuff.
That's so cool that you guys are both still in school and have kind of created this framework that's got a decent amount of buzz. And I
Oh,
know
oh, he
what?
created the framework.
Mm-hmm.
The thing
Well,
is,
hey,
like, um,
you're building it with him though. I was gonna say,
Well,
that I have a friend also, Nexel. He created Create T3 app, and he's like 17, I think, when he started it. So I think it's cool that in the open source world you have anyone can get involved. Even if you are someone who is a professional software developer or someone who's still kind of getting your start and maybe still a student. So I guess Aiden, what inspired you to create this framework in the first place?
I mean, I think as with all side projects, it's definitely boredom. It's just like, wow, I have nothing to do right now. Like, of course, like there is always something to do. It's more so I don't want to do that thing that's productive, and I want to do something else instead. Um, And so basically, we actually started off as like, what if we made a virtual DOM but with WASM because a WebAssembly, because WebAssembly is fast, right? And therefore, virtual DOM with WASM equal fast. And then we realized probably not. There are trade-offs between the two, like WASM is big bundle size and et cetera. And so we kind of like slowly pivoted to this kind of compiler and block virtual DOM model that is like a great trade-off between um, performance and developer experience. So
All
yeah.
right, let's break down what you just said there. So you originally tried to do it with WASM, but that didn't really make a whole lot of sense in the long run because WASM is not really a performance solution. WASM was kind of a we want to write every language in the browser kind of solution, which is a bit of an absurd thing to want to do in the first place and probably actually leads to a lot of overhead to make that possible. That's kind of my reading on that situation.
Yeah. In the current state of WASM, yeah. I believe the last time I heard from Ryan Carney out on this, I believe it was like a 10 or 20% overhead on like base vanilla rendering performance. And so you have like that because you need to like serialize and deserialize values between JavaScript and WASM. So there's like a bit of overhead with that.
Yeah, because you're adding a step to where you either have a language that just runs natively or you're adding a step that allows another language to run. So
Exactly.
just that inherently involves overhead because you're adding something that wouldn't need to be there otherwise. There's
Yeah.
code that exists that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then what did you say after that? You said that instead of that, you went to some sort of DOM based method. You said virtual DOM or not virtual DOM?
So yeah, it was definitely a bit of R&D. So there's this project called BlockDOM, and BlockDOM introduces. I mean, I don't know if it's the first one, but it basically introduces this concept of a block virtual DOM, and essentially what it is, basically instead of treating the virtual DOM as a blueprint, to diff off of. So we normally in virtual DOM, you take 2 blueprints and you figure out the differences between the blueprints, and then you make those changes to the DOM. And so essentially you make the minimal amount of changes between the blueprints to make your change, the user interface. But that can get really expensive, right? If your blueprint gets really, really big, then you're going to have to do a lot of diffing. And that's what makes React kind of slow. So what block DOM does, it essentially treats the virtual DOM as a template, kind of like Vue. Essentially, it does static analysis on the template, and it figures out what parts in the virtual DOM can change and what parts can't. So essentially, static nodes like a div or image can't change, but dynamic stuff like your props or your state inside the your JSX or whatever can change. And so it identifies those things, and every time you update your user interface, you don't diff the virtual DOM anymore. You just insert the data where it is. Kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of like solid fine-grained, but without the signals part.
Yeah, the static analysis part sounds like the real core there, because with static analysis, this is a kind of like a programming language term to where you're able to look at a thing and basically analyze it based on just what is there in the code. And so if you can do that with the DOM, then you're going to be able to more fine-grained understand what needs to be changed, what needs to be diffed between the two. That's fascinating. Okay, I think that actually makes sense to me. So you took this block DOM thing and you wrote another type of virtual DOM, like a similar thing. Is that what you did?
It's basically a re-implementation of the block virtual DOM, but it works with JSX and it works with React.
Okay, so block DOM originally was not based around JSX, so it had no sort of compatibility with React.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then how compatible is Million with React? Is it fully compatible, mostly compatible, or just kind of compatible?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, we say that most things are compatible. It is not.
Well, I guess in practice, yeah. Have you ever tried to migrate a fairly sizable app and seen where the rubber meets the road?
Yeah, there are definitely issues. Like, one thing with static analysis, it's not like a one size fits all bullet, right? If we still need to work on like bunch of edge cases that can happen in like the JSX or like your component, because at the end of the day, React isn't a template. It's more of like a UI runtime API, right? Like with Vue, you can have like a kind of defined language. Where there's Svelte, you have kind of like a defined language, or DSL. But with it's harder with React, and so we're still working out the edge cases. And so like one issue we faced the other day was with Next.js hydration, and so the output we were generating for the SSR, like the server side, and then output we were generating for the client side were different. And so every time we try to migrate it, they would hit like a hydration bug. And the reason why was because of our transforms. So basically, the transform code didn't match the original component. And so we were using the original component for the server and the weird transform stuff for the client, and it would just break. So we literally just fixed that last night. So it's definitely in an experimental stage where we are trying to make it not break, but it breaks. The thing about our philosophy with this, though, is we want to make it like progressively enhanceable. Essentially, what I mean by that is certain things that technically aren't supported by Million will try to be degraded to React. And so let's say you have one thing that limitation we have is deterministic returns. Essentially, you can, generally speaking, have one return at the end of the thing for us to analyze, right? Or end of the component. And so if you have like a conditional JSX like above it, like that's like an early return or something, we aren't able to analyze it yet. And so essentially what we do is we just tell React to handle this component instead. We say like this is
fallback to React, essentially.
Exactly.
That's really clever. Yeah, because people are going to want to do all their crazy stuff they could usually do in React, and to support the sum total of React into paradigm, it's really hard to do. I know Quick is going through a similar battle to where there's like Quick and there's Quick React. And it's like Quick React is meant to be this like version of Quick that's compatible with React. But then when you do that, you end up having a lot of things that don't necessarily work exactly the way they would work in React. So I'll be curious. Now the next time I talk to Misko, I'm going to have to ask him, what happens when stuff breaks in Quick React? Does it fall back or does it just break? Because that sounds like a pretty elegant solution to that.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely what we're aiming for. Like for me, I really like using React. It's like something like, it's weird because most people are like, oh, F React. I haven't used Svelte, and so
dude, well, I'm on the same camp as you. Like I've used all the frameworks and I like them all for their own unique reasons. But like I learned coding through React, like not even like JavaScript. Like, I learned through. I was one of those people. They say that you learn React before you learn JavaScript, then you're all screwed up for the rest of your life. Like that's me. I'm that person.
I have a funny story actually. So the way I learned React wasn't like normally people learn through like. Definitely not unless you're like post whenever they release a new docs. Learning through new docs is like definitely the way, but like
so much nicer. Yeah,
it's so nice, right? But like for me, I learned React by rebuilding it, and so like at some point, like you for our initial version, what we tried was like compatibility. So kind of like what Preact compat has or Inferno compat or whatever React like library compatibility has. And so I was literally building every single hook. I was trying to understand like, oh, what does use ID do? Or what does use sync external value do? And so it was really cool doing that. And one thing that actually differentiates us from compat libraries is that we don't replace what React, like it's not a masquerade of the whole application in a sense. So what compatibility libraries do is it just pretends like you're writing React and replaces React with this compatibility library. And every single part is implemented in their own
so it's kind of like a
library.
polyfill.
Exactly. It's exactly like a polyfill. But like the issue with this specific polyfill is that React isn't based on standards. And so every time you want to update, you're it's quite
you're kind of just looking at the repo and seeing what changed and then figuring out what that means.
So it's a constant like cat and mouse, right? You're trying to update your stuff, and you have to like handle React 18 or handle React 19 maybe, and so it's like it's hard to keep up with that. Another thing is like there's always going to be behavior differences, and so if you're making a compat library and you're not making that clear, it can be like very deceiving to users. And so what we do is we understand that and we say like, okay, you know what? React is good enough for most things. We don't need to care about performance all the time. But in certain cases, there will be performance issues. And so what we allow you to do is we allow you to opt into Million on a component by component basis. Essentially, and we can demo this later, but you can wrap your component with a block function and it turns it into a Million component. And so that way it's not a compatibility library. It's using React kind of.
Okay. Yeah. I have so many questions. I can go on with this for a while, but I want to pause here and ask Toby. Toby, how did you first hear about Million and how did you get involved in the project?
Funny story. I actually got to hear about Million from like this article feed provider that I use on my Chrome. It's like a Chrome extension. Probably heard about it there. So I was just scrolling through it randomly one day, and then I saw like this library makes your React application up to 70% faster. I was like, oh, cool. Then I clicked on it, and I went to the I think it was like an old doc, so maybe like a blog post or something. So like from there, I found the link to the website, and then I installed it. I instantly set up like a Vite project and got it working on my computer on my machine, and then I installed the library. I was just like, okay, I'm super excited. Let's test it out. So I tested the counter example. I was like, and I could actually see like the improvements that Million was doing then in my application. Because I was like, okay, how is this even possible? Because all I did was compare me having my components like the counter components without block, and then I saw the way it was working, and then I compared it to when I wrapped it with the block, like then passed it as a reference. I was like, okay, this is really insane. So I reached out to Aiden from his website, a very cool website. You probably see it somewhere on his on his bio. So I was like, okay, I would like to set up a coffee chat and stuff. I joined the server first, then I reached out to him on Discord and all that. And then we set up a coffee chat, and from then on, and all this happened like earlier this year. By the way, I didn't join Million until earlier this year. So so then we set up a coffee chat. I was like, okay, yeah. And there was like we needed some help working on like um, advocacy stuff and DevRel stuff. So I was like, yeah, fine. That's kind of my niche, and I have some experience doing that, even though I haven't done that like professionally. So yeah, that was how I joined the team, and here I am now. I've done a couple of work for Million too. Not really intense engineering stuff like Aiden, because he does like most of the engineering stuff. He just says we all the time.
Well, you probably help. I would guess you probably test out like demos, and
Yeah.
when you changes things, you gotta make sure the product you have still works when you're upgrading. It's like that you'd be surprised how far that goes, and then how much you're gonna learn in the process of doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's why getting involved in these open source projects, like, it really accelerates you as a developer. I found that when I got involved in Redwood, I started learning so much more. And just even though I wasn't like writing the code in the repo, I was seeing what they were doing. I was seeing the change. I was seeing like the downstream effects on the demo apps I was building. And then you start like kind of putting pieces together. And you said you just started doing this at the beginning of this year. Aiden, when did you start kind of making this into a project that had a community? So like you have a Discord. So it's like, when did you just decide to create a Discord? And did you kind of have a conscious idea of, I want to build this into a thing, or was it people started showing up and saying, hey, we need a Discord?
Yeah, I'm honestly really bad at like building communities, so I'm probably not the person to ask. But originally we were on GitHub discussions, and like that got really hairy, and so I was like, you know what?
So the community showed up before the Discord. That was kind of my question.
Yeah, a little bit. I wouldn't say like there was a large community in a sense, but there was probably like 5 or 6 active people, which is really cool. And so we were just like, move to Discord, and it just kind of ballooned from there. It's something that we're still working on. Community management is hard, and I'm sure you know that. It's like you have to like not only be able to like have your bells and whistles with roles or whatever, and also but also like engage the community somehow. So yeah, that's definitely something we're still working on, but
be curious, Scott, really, do you have any words of wisdom to them as people building community right now, as someone who knows so much about community?
Community. Yeah, so I don't know about words of wisdom, but it takes consistency, like you were saying. It takes engagement, right? Engaging the community, being consistent with producing things that of value, right? Giving value to your community. And that doesn't necessarily have to be from like Million. It could be other partnering things that you do, and bring that value into the community. It also means people want to be a part of something, right? And so what are you doing? You're kind of like building this in public, right? It's open source. You're doing all this fun stuff with it. So that's very important. That's like, it's a huge key factor as to probably why your community has grown so much, right? And I would say that to continue that growth, just get people involved more, right? Like that's a big piece of it. The more people are involved, and not even necessarily like contributing to the open source, but just having people state their opinions and things like that. Maybe even doing some live shows with some users, things like that, and just getting them getting their take on things, and what they're using Million for. Maybe do like user stories or something like that, some fun things like that, not necessarily like case studies. I hate that word, by the way. Just some fun things that you could highlight the users and the people in the community, because the more you can make them a part of this, which they are, the more that people are going to want to contribute and do things with it. So yeah, I'd say that's a big thing. So you're already doing most of it. You just gotta keep at it, add in some more things, and be like consistent as much as you can. So
Noted. Thank you, Scott.
It's funny because we were working on like a thing where we try to like integrate to like community projects, and we literally call it case studies.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, but it's okay.
I like the term case studies. I think
Sure,
it's
some people
because
do.
it's a very corporate-y kind of word, but it's like, you have like this was the case, and we did a study on the case, like.
So it gives me like Sherlock Holmes vibes. We're like trying to investigate.
Yeah, no, it's true. When it comes to tech stuff, it can be like I really like companies that have like technical blogs, like even companies as big as like Netflix. Will have like very in-depth technical blogs, and will write these stories, or write stories of like times things broke and how they kind of debugged it, and like first figured out what was even wrong with it. And it's like you have to narrow it down to like such a very specific thing that had gone wrong. I saw one, I forget which company it was, but it was Datadog. Like they're a company based around monitoring when stuff breaks. So it's like what happens when the company that monitors the stuff breaking breaks itself.
Right.
And their entire system went down. They were multi-cloud, so they were like they had like Amazon, Azure, specifically those clouds. But they had like two big clouds, maybe even more, and they both went down because they broke it in such a profound way. It broke both of their multiple clouds that were set up for fallbacks, and so it's just you just never know. Like the most professional, best people in the world, still manage to break their stuff in unfathomable ways, which makes me feel better as a developer.
Yeah, and see that's another thing right there. Just like Anthony was stating, like he just told you a story, right? I mean, I think storytelling is a very big piece of all this, right? And the better you get at storytelling, the better you're going to be able to communicate things with people, and then the better they're going to understand the process of what you're going through. The more they're going to relate to things, and the more they're going to want to be a part of it. So, yeah.
So let's tell a story about Million right now. You said you have a demo for us?
We do, yeah. So long ago, no. we
Galaxy.
let's see. Let's see if I can share my screen. Okay. So this is like the demo we show everyone. Essentially it's
You could increase your
yes.
text a couple times.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. I like this demo, by the way. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, like, essentially, it's basically, what if we had like a bunch of expensive UI elements, like a lot of them, and this is like completely like not realistic, but we
And
just
real
like,
quick,
you know
what you're kind of doing here is you kind of create like a visual representation of the JS framework benchmark, which gives you a table
Yes.
with a whole bunch of elements, right?
Yeah, essentially. Except like way less scientific, but we're just gonna ignore that. Essentially, like when I click this, the count will go up, and it would just like multiply a random value and get its product. Essentially,
And the
when
point
I
is
click
that
on this,
you're trying to do a lot of computation on the screen at one time.
exactly, yeah. And you can see that like it's kind of slow. And to be fair, we're not using Fiverr, and so when we switch to Fiverr, it's better. But
You
notice
should explain what is React Fiverr.
Oh yes. So React Fiverr is essentially when you use like start transition window, or if you have like suspense. Like essentially it's like this thing that instead of doing all the work at once, it spreads it over like a time period. It's like instead of paying your house all in one like amount, you pay it over, 30 years or whatever. And so like the thing is that's great, but like let's say I'm clicking like really, really fast. It's missing a lot of the clicks I have. Like this is really, really green. But you can see here, like I'm clicking like 10 times per second, but it's only updating like, 1 time per second. And so that's the issue with Fiverr. It's that like it does make the like page not lag as much, but like it's not updating as frequently. It's like if you play games, it's like missing FPS or like dropping FPS. Or not dropping FPS.
It's a frame rate being dropped.
Frame rate, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because when you have a nice smooth frame rate, like 60 frames per second, then everything moves smoothly, like you're watching a movie. But then if there's lag, if you're dropping frames, then you'll see jitter, and that's when you know that basically you're throwing too many pieces of computation at your computer at once, because at the end of the day, a computer is a physical object with the number of bits that it can compute in a certain amount of time. And if you try and throw too many at it, it'll basically say, hey, I don't have this many bits, and then it'll drop bits.
Exactly. Yeah. But like, what if we just made it faster? And that's kind of what Million tries to ask. And this is the caveat here is that this is the same code, but wrapped in one function. So just note that. And so when I like click really
So you're
fast,
kind of cheating.
yeah. So I mean, like the point is like you don't have to like write a different framework here, and so it's pretty good. Like it's a lot better than React if we look in comparison. And we can always like, oh my gosh, okay.
Can we just code something to be like on hover, click 1000?
Honestly, yeah, you can always attach like a fiber or like a fiber solution here where it's like it like amortizes as well, but like or like it just spreads it over as well. But yeah, like this is just raw Million. It's pretty fast. And you can also see like the actual benchmark instead of this demo. That you can Million performs pretty fast. The virtual DOM itself. From what I like remember, we can look at it right now. Let me see.
Yeah, so you have the code for this.
I
cloned down that repo and I didn't see a start script. Like, how do you start it?
What I do usually is v or it's like a npm run dev, whatever the package manager is.
There was no dev script, is what I'm saying.
Oh,
Interesting.
interesting.
A song. I
Sing-
wanna be a millionaire so freaking bad. And then it just starts.
Hold on, let me see.
Yeah, I
This
was
is-
profoundly confused when I cloned the repo down. Like, how do I run this? I even ran pnpm vite, and it got confused and didn't know what to do.
Interesting. Is this what you're okay? Is this the repo you cloned? Million-Demo?
So it was whatever goes. So when you go back to the demo itself.
Oh, okay. Let me share my entire window instead. I feel like that'd be easier.
It was. I just clicked the.
Yes.
I just clicked the GitHub thing on the top left.
Mhm.
What does that go to?
This one, and then
Yeah, that goes to this. Yeah, that's. Wait, hold on. Is that what it was?
I think you might have clicked on like this one, right? This is like the main repo, and then this is the.
So I think I ended up at the Million.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why. Yeah, I went to the actual Million Git repo. It had the website in it, so I should have put that together.
We can analyze the source right now as well.
Yeah, let's check this out.
Yeah, so the relevant code I don't remember where it is, but it's probably here. Yeah, so essentially what we do is each row in the benchmark here is a like a table row, like tr element. And so this is really like a really expensive element because we're adding like
font up a couple times.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're looking at right now, this is the table view. And so this is what is actually displaying. You have random and count and then product. So those are the three different things that are displaying in your table.
Yeah. And then we also have like a bunch of random, like bunch of hidden like TD elements. So that's like something React has a div, but we don't.
What are
so
the
like
things?
Like we're just emulating like a very expensive row. And so like every time, if you're using like a normal virtual DOM, you essentially have to diff like 100 extra rows. But if you're using Million, you don't have to do it because you already know what the nodes are. And so this is just showing that like, hey, Million is fast when there is like, when rows are like expensive to diff. If that makes sense.
So you're giving a handicap kind of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Because like if we remove this, the performance would be the same because you're not diffing like that many nodes or that many rows, right?
So the table view we're looking at right now, is this for all three of them, or for just, because there's the React, there's the React Fiber, and then there's the Million. So how do those three things translate into the code?
So it's all three of them using the exact same component.
Okay, so they all use this same code here, but then you run them through different frameworks to then
Exactly.
them.
Exactly.
Okay, I see. Interesting. So what's the difference between the React one and the React Fiber in terms of like the actual code? I'm kind of curious. Like, how do you turn React Fiber on?
It's in this one probably. It's pretty easy. Every time you have like a state, like a state change, you can just wrap it around with the start transition, and React will like see this, and it will just run like a basically, this is like, I don't know what it's called, like either throttle or debounce or whatever, but like yeah, basically that's what it does. And so this, every time I click a button, I run a transition, and then it will like spread those like computations out.
Interesting. Yeah, we have to have someone from the React team to talk about React Fiber. I don't really know much about it. I just know it's the new hotness in React that makes things better for reasons. Cool. Anything else you want to highlight in this demo or in this code base?
Yeah, I mean, that's really it. You can definitely take a look. There's a lot of like unnecessary things I over-engineered, like suspense, which you don't need here. But yeah, take a look if you're interested.
What are you running it on in terms of deployment?
I'm running on Vercel. Basically, it's a V project, so it's just a static website in Vercel.
Sweet. If you ever have interest in, so is there going to be any like server stuff? And like, how does the server fit into the world of Million?
The thing is, it doesn't really. Like one thing we're thinking about is, eventually it will. Like if we want everyone, like one thing we were considering is building a meta framework. And so one thing about, we're not unsure, like we haven't tried yet, but like we want to eventually try to integrate with like the optimal solutions. And so like essentially, what if we could integrate with Quick and through Quick React, and also like whatever. But if we can't do that, then we have to like enter into like the meta framework world and figure out how can we do all this.
Yeah, the meta framework world is very interesting right now. Like the fact that Solid Start is now going to use Astro, to me, like throws this like huge interesting question mark into the whole thing, because now if framework's going to build on Astro as a meta framework, it's like, what does that mean? So it's like, would Million be able to integrate with like Astro, or because that would be very different from integrating with Quick?
Right. It is. I think it already works with Astro. You can just, it's not a meta framework. It's just like you can use Million components inside Astro.
Yeah. That would be the simplest way to add meta framework like capabilities, and without having to, because the question is basically, do you want to build a router or not, or do you want to use someone else's router?
Yeah, and we've been working with like thinking about like how can we collaborate with existing open source projects, like people who are working on like RSC, like React Server Components meta frameworks, and how can we work with them to add Million or things like that. Like kind of like the thing about one thing about Million is like we try to do everything, like a lot of things well, but like we don't want to do everything well. And so we like eventually what we want to try to do is make a golden path where power users and performance focused people can follow this golden path inside React and have good applications essentially.
Yeah, no, it sounds really interesting. And it sounds like it's a kind of a wide open field in terms of where you want to go, because you've really honed in on this kind of front end client side type thing that is very much like, it's like React. You're just dealing with DOM and working on the browser, and there's this whole world of now server side stuff that all these frameworks are playing in, and it can be daunting. So I can understand why it would make more sense for you to want to see like, what can we plug into versus like, how do we build our own router and server side stuff? It's like that's like a huge thing. Like you're a college student, it's like you'd be competing against frameworks that have entire companies of people building on this stuff. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I would definitely recommend getting a good sense of what is out there and what could Million plug into, and then find the team that is going to be most willing to work with you to make it happen. Like people who are like excited to be like, yeah, let's make this work. Here's someone from our team who can help you out. Like that's going to, I think, kind of make or break. Like you could find something that could be like technically the best solution, but if they have no time for you, and the slightly, maybe not quite as refined solution, but still pretty good choice is like, hey, we're down for this. This is the person who can actually help you. That can make a really big difference in terms of like what you actually make happen.
Totally, yeah. And I'm sure that there's a lot of like great people that out there in open source projects that are willing to help as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One thing, yeah, it's interesting because I've mostly been in the front end world, and so like I have zero like real world experience in how do we make like like not even like using certain like server stuff, but also like being able to make like a whole meta framework or like integrate with meta framework. So it's definitely a space I not only haven't explored but need to explore.
Yeah, I mean, happy to chat anytime about it. I know me and Scott pretty much know all the people working on all the main meta frameworks right now. We have them on the show, and we have them on JavaScript Jam and stuff. So yeah, and we need to get you on our spaces. Are you down to come on like a Wednesday? We have them at it should be a good time for you since you're in Oregon. We do them 12 p.m. Eastern time or Pacific time. So yeah, I would love to have you on that. I also want to get you on FS Jam to talk about Million, because like I'm really fascinated by this frame, right? This is really cool. I think you have a super cool story. Like what you've managed to accomplish in such a small amount of time is really great. And the fact that there is a community at all, and that there's people excited about this is great. So yeah, I have some sound in the back. Sorry about that. But yeah, what else do you want to talk about in terms of Million and what you got going on?
Yeah, this is just kind of a sneak peek, but I do have like I'm writing an article on this. So essentially, one thing that people don't understand is like there are already like a lot of this is not finished at all, but like just a sneak peek.
Can you zoom in just a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. Let's see. There we go. Okay.
So data-driven / data agnostic is the y-axis, and optimizes reconciliation versus optimizes rendering is the x-axis. Yeah, you're gonna have to explain that a bit more.
Yeah. So essentially, like there are a bunch of React rendering solutions or like React like optimization solutions, but people don't understand what they do, and so we've already have like existing solutions like use memo, right? Where you can kind of like memo some like data and then it will not render if you like whatever. Like I think this is better memo.
Yeah, the memoization and use memo. This is the part of React that I find that actually very few React devs even get into. And the ones who do have like battle scars.
Exactly. No, exactly. It's I mean that's the point of forget, right? So like to explain, data driven is like things that depend on your data. And so, for example, memo depends on your props, or Jotai depends on you making atoms in your code, or virtualization depends on you having a list of data, or list of code, or list of stuff, and it renders specific things. Data agnostic is like it doesn't care about your data, it just renders. We also have this axis of rendering and reconciliation. So rendering and reconciliation are actually different. Essentially, rendering is the process of running your component function, just like running it and it returns that JSX. Reconciliation is the thing I'm talking about with the diffing. Like if we had two blueprints, let's figure out the differences and make the actual change. And so these things like Jotai or virtualization or forget, they either reduce the amount of rendering you need to do, or like it just prevents this rendering reconciliation process from even happening. But with things like Preact signals, it doesn't necessarily. Essentially, what it does, it figures out like the relationship between the data and the user interface, and it makes that direct change. And so it doesn't optimize rendering; it optimizes the reconciliation process. And so you can render as much as you want, but the thing is going to be really, really fast. But the thing with all these solutions is that they're all data driven in a sense. So essentially, it depends on you having some control over your data. And this is the whole like signals versus like whatever argument, right? Like if you have control over your data and you understand the reactivity portion, you can have really fast updates. But that comes at the cost of you have to think of your data. And so Million.js is like a more agnostic solution. So like, what if we didn't have to care about the data? What if it just was fast?
This chart also tells me that there's a huge question mark for something that is data agnostic and optimizes rendering.
Right. I'm sure like I think fiber could go down here maybe, but like it's something that, you know, I have to think about more. And you'll probably see it released soon.
Yeah, no, I like this. This is an interesting graphic, and it's something that I've never even thought of before. So yeah, I would be very curious to check out the blog post. Yeah, you're writing for this, and we'll throw that in our newsletter for sure. Do you have other things you've written? Like, do you have a blog?
Yeah, we have a technical blog. We like the first two articles are about our like methodology. Like, okay, how the hell do we make it so fast? And so we kind
Also,
of like, yeah,
you guys had an incredible video. You put out a video like middle of 2022 that I saw that was really well edited. That kind of like showed a lot of the stuff you're showing on your webpage. I really did. It was only like a minute long, but it was really sharp.
Yeah, I have a friend who's an editor who helped us get that together.
Yeah, that is great. It was really
yeah.
well done. We'll share that in the show notes.
Always good to have a good editor friend.
Exactly. Exactly. It's funny because like I don't know if this is just us that like sparked it, but like some of the projects I'm seeing now are coming out with like really cool like demo video, like Apple style videos. I don't know if that's us, but it's interesting to see that trend.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's great. It's like this. It's really easy if you have people who have the skill set to put out like content that blows away most open source projects. Because like most open source projects, it's people who code stuff and like that's what they do, you know. So they have that skill set and they code something super legit. But media is an entirely separate skill set.
Totally. Yeah, and also you have to have like way too much time on your hands to do this. But
yeah, or money.
That's another thing.
Time or money.
Exactly.
All the above.
Yeah,
all the above.
That's where the Apple style stuff is coming in now. Like the people who are now building Apple style things for their projects because like Apple like money.
Exactly. I'm not complaining though. It looks great. Like gosh, what is it? Like
you bump this up a couple.
Yeah. Like the bento boxes on it.
Back in block. This is a deep dive. This is not a beginner friendly post. That's funny.
But yeah, like this is kind of like you can definitely read through it, but like the main part is like,
no, I love this. This is like the Million thesis.
Exactly. Like this is slow because we had to diff a bunch, but what if we didn't diff a bunch? Instead, we did static analysis, and then we just, dirty check the data, like check the data change or not, and then update it.
Yeah, that was what you were explaining at the very beginning of the episode.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we talk about also like why do we not make a compatibility library? Instead, we do this opt-in thing. And so like first of all, why do we do that and how we do that? Essentially, it's just like we render a loader component and the loader gets a ref from React, right? We can use like a use ref. And that ref stores that element. And so instead of using React to render the virtual DOM, we just take that element and then we render it with the Million virtual DOM. And so React doesn't know that we rendered it, but Million does. Yeah, and this is definitely like...
who created these images?
I did inside Excalibur.
These are all just Excalibur.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Not
I've
the
never seen Excalibur used with colors. I think that's why it looks slightly
I
nicer
see.
than your typical Excalibur because yeah, it just pops. Like it's really clear, but also it looks nice and it's not like because I have most Excalibur because it's all just black and white.
Yeah.
Like it can get the idea across, but it doesn't look very good for like a blog post. Whereas like this looks really good in blog post format.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great summarization. I've actually seen like this. I don't know if we introduced this pattern. I'm pretty sure we didn't. But there are also what's cool is like other like things. Like if you've seen Maverick, they're kind of like a fine grained reactivity thing for React and web components. They're kind of also using this pattern to do like opt-in rendering to their thing. And so there's so many solutions to React now. It's both cool, but like one thing I read somewhere, uh, someone commented or something. It's like this is more indicative of React, where like
Well,
I
yeah,
know,
it's that there's a whole ecosystem of React workarounds. It's
yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit absurd. But so do you think could you imagine a world where Million.js would exist kind of free floating separate from React at all? It would just be like another
Mhm.
virtual DOM solution that uses JSX, but that has nothing to do with React.
Right. I think there could be, but I don't think it's our responsibility to do that. I think like we have our virtual DOM base is really strong, like really, really strong. And what we're working on now is how can we make the React compatibility, Next.js, whatever, very, very stable. Eventually, my hope is like there's already like some frameworks that adopt the pattern that Million uses, like the block virtual DOM. But like eventually, my hope is like one day people who build frameworks will try this out. And there's already a little bit, but like definitely not enough. And so whether they're using the Million virtual DOM or they build their own block virtual DOM and they build their own framework on that, that is the ideal. I guess like the point of why we're all doing this is to promote this idea. The idea that block virtual DOM is cool and you should try it out.
No, it's cool. I like that how you have a very clear thesis of why this framework exists, what approach it has, how it's different from the current approach, what that value prop is. Like it's really great. I think you've done a really good job of boiling this down, and the content you've created around it is really great. So yeah, I hope that you can continue to push this message out into the world. We're happy to make connections with anyone if you're looking to like kind of go on more streams and things like that. I think yeah, you got like a really kind of well honed pitch. It's really impressive. So great job with that. Great job building this framework. And yeah, I definitely highly recommend people check this out. I think it's has a lot of value to it. And if you want to let people know what are like some links or places people can go to learn more about this and like where they should go to connect with the Million community.
Yeah, I mean, definitely just go to million.dev, which is hosted on Google Domains as a side note, which is really sad.
Oh no.
But yeah, definitely check out that website. We have literally everything on there. If you want to come chat with us, you can go to million.dev/chat on Discord. So yeah, soon we'll have to migrate, but the day is not today.
Well, awesome. And yeah, we'd love to get you on our spaces as well, along with Toby, who had to drop, unfortunately. But be cool to have a space and we can have, people from the community who want to come up and ask questions. They'd be welcome to do that as well. And yeah, this is a very cool project, Aiden. And it's really impressive that you built it just as like a high school student who is now a college student. I have to imagine that whenever you do eventually graduate, this will serve you very well in your job hunt also to be like, hey, I built an entire open source project and framework and community. So yeah, great job, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate and thank you for hosting me on the podcast. I'll definitely check the spaces out. Definitely interested in that.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time.
See you in the next one.